I don't see color. People use this phrase to signify that they treat everyone the same, but it's impossible to separate a person from the color of their skin. In addition to just being downright factually inaccurate, pretending not to see color could actually harm victims of abuse. For Black women, if you refuse to see the color of their skin, then you can't recognize the unique obstacles they face when leaving abusive relationships. This is Unsilenced, a JBWS podcast where we have real conversations about abuse. I'm MC Robinson, and today I'm speaking with
Tamu King. My history goes back to also being a survivor. But years later, after that, I wanted to figure out a way to really serve and support, but ended up going back to school, was able to get into the only DV agency I ever worked at during that time. And they trained me, and I became a counselor and a therapist and so forth. And then after some years of leaving, I decided to start my own company called The Change Mind.
In this episode, Tamu speaks candidly about the challenges facing Black victims of abuse. She breaks down harmful stereotypes, including this belief that all Black women are uniquely strong, and how it can be used to keep victims in abusive relationships. When Black victims do leave, Tamu explores the judgment they might face from their community and how racism may prevent them from receiving proper services. But before you listen to the amazing Tamu, please take a moment to subscribe to Unsilenced wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us to break the silence around domestic violence. Why is it critically important to consider race when talking about domestic violence and trying to educate the community about the ways that it presents?
There's something about many of us being taught that what happens in our home stays in our home. We protect our our spouses. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we know that a lot of some of that has to do with brutality of our spouses from law enforcement,
Hmm.
right? So you know, that's it. That's a piece of it. That's not all of it, but that's a piece
Hmm.
of it. But we just have this thing in us where we protect
Yeah.
whether it's from whether we're talking about law enforcement, whether we're talking about protecting from the world, or we just, you know, we the label of being strong, which has hindered us so much throughout these decades.
Hmm.
So we suck it up. Come on, we keep moving, right? And I know that many of my ancestors they dealt with that, and they kept raising the babies and being abused, and they stayed right? So it was just kind of ingrained in us, even if it wasn't said, like, you know, spoken, the year after year we saw the behaviors, so we just stayed, many of us. And then many of us not even knowing, like I said, I didn't even know that resources existed.
Yeah.
And this was 94 when I decided to leave. Thankfully, I had a mother who, when I said I needed to come home, allowed me to come home, but I didn't tell her what was happening. But we know that a lot of folks don't have that,
Right.
right? So, but like I said, I didn't even know these things existed out there in the world. And then to put our business out there to say I'm going to go into a shelter or something, it's like,
Hmm.
no, right? I'm going to stay and I'm going to deal because you know, racism and all other dynamics played a big part in why we stay
Hmm.
and why we feel like we have to protect, whether our spouse or just, you know, this is just what we have to do and have to deal because we have to be strong. And it it just hurt us so bad. It still hurts us so bad. So if people can understand all these dynamics, you know, we're talking about racism affecting how we show up or how people see us. Because also, when we talk about racism or when we talk about the stereotype
Hmm.
that are placed on particularly Black and brown women, you're
Yeah.
strong, you're this, you're a fighter, you're that. So when the police shows up, they look at us in a different way
Right.
because we're also seen as violent sometimes. Women, Black women, we're seen as aggressive, right? You know, the mad Black woman, right? We're
Hmm.
seen those stereotypes still exist, you know, so we're seen in those ways. So we call the cops, we don't know who, are you going to harm him? Are you going to look at me some particular way and then no one gets arrested? And then when
Hmm.
you leave, now I'm beat even more because you trying to figure out, not realizing I called and said I need help. So instead of
Hmm.
you coming to help me, we got all these other different dynamics that are happening. So, I tell folks, one, we got to break down these stereotypes. Get rid of them. I'm a human being. That
Hmm.
black and brown woman is a human being that's being harmed. So if she calls, show up for her.
Yeah. You touched upon a lot of really incredible themes here. One of them, kind of in the research I was doing on this, the Women of Color Network states that Black women are disproportionately more likely to be criminalized by the legal system and are routinely arrested at higher rates when the acts of violence is only in self-defense against the person using abuse when calling the police for assistance. Why do you think that is? Can you go into that a little bit more? I said you said that sometimes Black women are viewed as violent or as a threat. You talk about that a little bit more because a Black woman is also 80% more likely to be convicted for killing the person using abuse against her than other races, and that's according to the Black Women's Roundtable. Can you just go into this? Because I think it's a really interesting piece.
Yeah. I don't want it to sound so simple, but the crux or the bottom line of that is that we are seen, or shall I say, we are not seen. Maybe that's what I should say. We're just not seen as humans. So if I don't see you, then I don't believe that you have worth, and everything that I think about you is negative. So if I do see you, which you should with your eyes, everything that I think about you is negative. So I don't see that when you're cut that you bleed. I could see it, but you're not hurt. Get up. You're an aggressive person anyway, so you must have had something to do with what happened. So in the crux of the fighting and the arguing, you was enraged anyway, so you meant to kill him or to harm him. So you need to pay for it. There's a African American woman who ended up going to jail for just firing the gun in the
Mm.
ceiling. Florida, stand your ground laws. Is why
Mm.
they attacked her. She just fired it in the ceiling and she landed in prison. And there was a whole big fight and protest to get her out. She was in prison for some time, right? Let someone else possibly do that.
Mhm.
It's not a black woman. It would have been seen as self defense and protecting herself.
Right.
But for her, she was trying to protect herself and she gets put in jail. Not just a day, she spent time. When we say why, it's just because we're still seen as a threat. We're
Mm.
seen as being hurtful, angry, no feelings, don't bleed. We're
Mm.
not human.
Mm.
We're still seen like that today. I've had people say to me at times, I don't know how to take you. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know how to take me? And it's because of nothing I said, because people have said that don't even know me. It's not like they just look at me and say, I really don't know what to think about you.
Wow.
Okay. I'm just going to exit stage left.
Mm.
Wait,
Mm.
I'm exit right, exit stage
Hmm.
left. And you won't even have to worry about it. Right? Because people are always trying to figure us out in
Mm.
a negative way, not thinking the best of us. It's always the words.
Right.
I don't know what we have to do in this world to get people to see us in a light that's beautiful, in a light that deserves protection, just like everybody else. That we bleed, that we hurt. As another thing, the pain that we suffer, it's as if it doesn't matter. Like, long, long time ago, when we used to push out these babies and they wouldn't give us any medication, or they would do these surgeries on us and they wouldn't give us no medication. Now it's seen as you can handle anything. Oh, that's just a little pain. Get over it. We go to the hospitals and we're seen as if we're overreacting or we
Yeah.
just want drugs when we go to the hospital and say we're in pain. Oh, you're fine. You're right. We're seen once again, sorry if I'm rambling,
You're
as
not.
if are not human. Still, this is the medical field, right? We're just going on to different, white people don't get it. White people, we're just unseen.
But this, you raise a really good point, which is if you're unseen and you're also struggling with domestic violence, I mean, this is really an issue that then could complicate things. Like identity is critical because of all of the things that you just referenced. It makes the barriers harder. It's so much harder to seek assistance for a number of different reasons. One thing
Yeah,
I really want to circle back to that you said was this stereotype that all Black women are uniquely strong and capable. And you alluded a little bit to how this is a harmful narrative. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people would see that and be like, oh, but strength is good. Like, don't you want to be associated with strength? So, really break down why that is harmful and could potentially keep victims in abusive relationships even longer.
because if you see me as always being strong, from whatever that may look like to you, if I ever decide that I need to say help, that's a problem.
Right. Like a failing or something.
And I would tell, I was a therapist for many years, and I would have to tell women, and I've told men as well. We know that that happens, but I've had to have to say to them, when that thing where you feel like you are weakest because you might have to say something, or you stepped away, or you left, I said, do you realize that's strong? You know how much strength it takes to move and maneuver, or sit back and breathe, or say no, or pack up and go, like whatever that may look like for you, it takes a whole lot more. I did this conference one time and I wore, I don't know, some of the stuff that come up in my head. I brought a Superman cape, this big old red cape. It was red, so I guess it was Supergirl. I don't know. And I wore this cape. I had it tied, and at the beginning of the conference, they could see, and then I just turned around, and then I basically, these are not the words, but basically I was saying to them, I'm sick of this, and I unripped it and I
Mm.
threw it off. And I said, enough, right? In this conference, actually, I don't know, I'm sure there were other ethnicities and races in the space, but I know the majority were Black women in the space itself. And I said, enough of this. I said, I'm tired of this. We're talking about I'm a strong Black woman, I'm a blah, because society has told us. So we wear it like a cape and we wearing ourselves out. So we don't
Mm.
take care of ourselves. We don't say no. We don't do what we need to do for ourselves, for our families, right? We just keep moving, 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 moving until we just pass out. And then we have all these illnesses because we don't take care of ourselves. We don't know how to say no because we feel like we have to keep going for everyone else, but yet we leave ourselves out of the equation. And we think that's great. No, to me, that's foolish. We gotta remove the cape, remove what society says. I still have people say, "Oh, you're so strong." I'd be like, "Stop." So that's how I just check I'm like, "Stop."
Yeah.
I'm a human being. And he's like, "Well,
Mm.
I don't mean it." I'm a human being. And there's going to
Mm.
be moments where I might not seem so strong. There was times where I wouldn't cry in front of my children. And I'm so glad I started to get over that. Like my husband had passed away. My dad passed away this year. My husband passed away 12 years ago. My dad passed away last year. And, I was daddy's girl. So
Mm.
this is ashes and stuff I wear around my neck. And particularly with my dad, I found myself, there were moments where I just cried and my daughter come in the room. My daughter, who's 30, and my grandson, they live with me. And she, Mommy, you all right? And I just cry. And I said, you know what? No more of this. Because there were moments where I would suck it up, particularly when
Yeah.
my husband passed. Because they were younger. And I felt like I couldn't cry. I couldn't cry. I had to be strong. But yet
Wow.
that hindered me. So
Mm.
instead of crying, I ate. My health got worse.
Right.
Right. So I'm saying all of this, it doesn't benefit us to wear that badge. It hinders us. And I learned to let it go.
Wow. You make an amazing point because you were saying how a lot of times Black women aren't seen as human. And when you're giving that superhuman strength, you're still not being seen as human. You're being seen as a superhero or something above, rather than below. And I think what you're saying is so powerful of just see me as a person, like just like look at me.
And if I cry, I cry. If I'm sad that day, I'm sad.
Yeah.
If I seem like I'm going strong and getting through, hey, cool. But just like you want the permission to have all of those emotions and things, give me the same permission. So if I need to protect myself and I need to pack up and go, just like everyone else you want to protect, protect me. Believe my words. Believe me when I tell you I hurt. Believe me when I tell you he's abusive. I need some help. Help me out. Don't judge me. Don't say it must have been my fault because you think I'm angry or I must have hit him or I must have said something, you know? Yeah, let me give me permission to be human.
I love that. I think that's incredibly powerful. And it really reminds me of, let's say, a Black victim is trying to seek services. You talk a lot about, some of these behaviors that are racist, discriminatory, prejudice. How does that show up when a victim is seeking services? I mean, I think some people might be able to identify the overt ways, but there are a lot of covert, subtle ways that prejudice, racism, discrimination show up when a person is seeking services. So, can you kind of go into that a little bit about what those maybe microaggressions or different types of discrimination might look like for a Black victim that's seeking services or something that they might have to overcome that a white victim wouldn't have to?
I remember this one particular time. I was case manager, was a title at the time. And I noticed it a lot, but this one time it stood out. So we're in the hotline area of
Mhm.
the shelter. And I was noticing there was two women, one was white, one was black. They both were really independent, right? They just needed support. They just needed support. They needed a place to stay. They both had jobs. They both had kids. You know, they both get tired. It's kind of they weren't the same, but they both had they were
Right.
moving and shaking and doing their thing. So I remember, the white woman, she was, calm and she was like, yeah, I have this meeting, so I need to do this, this, this. Then I have work, and is it okay that I don't get here to this certain time because I don't get off my job? I mean, that was perfect, great, right? So we're supporting her around that. Nothing said about her. And it came in about close to the same time. So I've been there. So there really wasn't no extra dynamics to look at someone different. And
Right.
it just stood out this time because I'm like, oh, I've been seeing this happen. This is what I'm saying to myself.
Mhm.
Black woman later in the day, talking about some things she had to do, what's going on, some of her struggles she didn't get. At the time within this agency, there were, and I say at the time because I know before I left, I changed a lot of some things were changed. But at the time, there were these chores. And, similar to the white woman, like some things she wasn't able to get done. But she was like, I just, I need this and da 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 da, and I have to do this. So she's going on and on and on. She leaves out. Why she had to say it like that? And I'm like, well, what did she say? Well, she, and she's this and sounding like aggressive, and she need to make sure she do her stuff and da 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 da. And I'm like, well, I was so confused. Because in my mind, other woman was just here, it was something similar. And they were just like, man, she on the ball. It's all right. She gonna be all right. She on the ball. Look, she getting her stuff done. She hustling.
Mhm.
This one is aggressive. This one is kind of late. She didn't get her stuff done. And I'm like, I felt like I was in the twilight zone. And I was sitting there, I remember thinking, like, wow, this has happened. Sometimes you don't, when you're in the thick of work, you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
But you're not paying attention, but you are. And I
Right.
noticed, oh my God, this has really been happening a
Mhm.
lot. And sometimes Black women are seen a lot different. And she could feel it because there were times where this particular woman would come and you could tell how a worker would speak to her. It would be a little as if the patience, not, it wasn't so abrupt, but their patience level was different.
Oh, interesting.
And with someone else, it might be like, okay, yeah, let me get that for you. And this one will come, yeah, we'll get it. We'll let you know when we get it. I'm like, why can't you get it now? They used to not like me at that time. And then when I became over that program, oh, they really didn't quite because I became a stickler about them. It was about the clients that we serve and how to best serve them. You know what I mean? All of them. I'm like, no, why can't we do that now? You ain't got nothing to do. Help her out. She could use it now. She need a pass now. She's trying to get on the bus now.
Right.
Right? We don't want to make her late. She's trying to handle her business. Right? So
Yeah.
at times, sometimes people might not see things so overtly, but that was overt. But just sometimes the words and how we would explain someone, particularly so intakes, and how even though we can't see their face, names are big. We a lot of time names, right? We know names connect to people, and most of the times it was factual. It
Yeah.
was very rare that plus they would tell you too, right, with their race. Sometimes they'll tell you
Right.
what their race is. And you could just tell by the way during the intake how that worker would describe that person.
Mm.
And because we would go over through the intake process to see whether or not they're fit. And you can tell by the conversation. And this person just called over the phone trying to get help.
Mm.
And it's as if, sometimes the conversation for this one would be pro because we want to pro get them in. We want to get them in. And then I've seen on the other side, the conversation would be, how do we keep them out? Like that would be the conversation. Like that would be, you understand what I'm saying? Of course, we never say, how do we keep them out?
Of course.
But the
Yeah.
conversation is because we would have meetings around intakes to say, oh, okay, this is Betty Lou and Betty Lou this and this is her history and she has this many kids. And there were times where I would say, well, how come you're talking about this person like we're trying to get them out or keep them out? This person, we're having a conversation of all the pros to make it be good to get them in. It would frustrate me, So I know that kind of, and I've heard from other people that I know within the state that has happened in their agencies as well.
Yeah. And I think, you get those people who are like, I'm not racist. I don't see race, so I couldn't possibly, right? So I couldn't possibly be having a prejudicial response or treating them differently than I would any other race. And I'm kind of curious because I think your example really outlines this in practice. But what would you say to those people who are kind of committed to not seeing race and saying everybody's equal? I help everybody the same. How would you kind of respond to that ideology?
So I've done a lot of work around racism, right? And one of
Mm.
the terms I ask people to stop saying because the reality is it's a lie. When people say I don't see color,
Hmm.
I treat everybody the same. I say one, that's a lie because you do see color. I know my assumption, right, from looking at you is white woman. I don't know your
Yes.
background, your ethnicity, right? The assumption is someone look at me, I'm a black woman,
Hmm.
right? They might not know my ethnicity, Jamaican or whatever, which I'm not, but right, they wouldn't
Right.
know
Hmm.
who's. And so the reality is you do see color, but also I need you to see my color because when you say you don't see color, you're negating everything about me, everything I come with, my background, my history, whether my history is racist or whatever it is, you are negating all of that. And you're putting me in a box of this Western culture
Right.
as if that is my world. And in reality, it's not. I have a whole background that comes with me, and I need you to see that.
Hmm.
So many times I have women that say, well, that's not what just listen. And I tell folks, you don't have to get nervous, nor do you have to get defensive. Sometimes people get defensive. You ain't no need to get defensive. But this is a teaching moment because that's another thing. I'm not an aggressive person. I want to have a conversation because I want to teach. I want
Hmm.
you to get it and understand so that you won't say that or do that again. So that you know that I'm a human, you know that I bleed, you know that I come with a background, and that you respect that and not see me and treat me like everybody else. I mean, we all deserve, I'm gonna treat you and get to learn you and know who you are and understand you, right? And treat you in that manner. Your needs may be different than my needs, right? How you show up could be different. So I want to be able to learn you so that I can support you in that way. You know, I used to always say with when I was working in a shelter, we can't be helping people cookie cutter. And I know a lot of times we would do that. When you look at the case plan, they would all look the same. I'm
Mhm.
like, these are five different people. Why these plans look all the same?
Mhm.
Which tells me you either didn't meet with them, or if you did, you didn't listen.
Mhm.
You know, because they didn't feel like they were getting what they needed because we copied and pasted a plan that didn't work for her. She needed something totally different.
Right.
And I could say, I'm just gonna go on home, or I go out on the street, or I go sleep in my car, or I go to a shelter because this is a mess. Because we're
Yeah.
not giving them what they need.
Yeah, and if you don't see race, if you don't acknowledge the color of someone's skin, then you also can't assist them in the most, to your point, appropriate or effective way. And you also can't maybe reach them in terms of education. One thing you said a little earlier on that I thought was really interesting was another reason that maybe victims that are black don't want to speak out about what's happening is a fear of kind of leaning into a further stigmatization. So they don't want to feed into some narrative that they think or that society does have. And can you speak a little bit more about that, about how, you said we kind of want to protect, we want to like make sure, that we're not feeding into a harmful narrative. Can you talk about how that can also be really complex for victims of domestic violence that are Black?
I remember there was a good friend of mine. She passed away. When she became a friend, I was long out of that relationship. And as I was in, like I said, it was 20 to 25 when I left. And she said, I said, yeah, this is, part of my book and the journey and blah, 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 blah. And she said, oh, if I knew you back then, I'd have never been your friend. I said, well, wait. I was like, I'm confused. I said, why? She said, because that's just stupid.
Wow.
I said, okay. This was another Black woman. She's not the only person that thinks that way within our community. You know, along with the stigma on it, it's just like for some people, it's like this stupid. That's not what you. We don't take that kind of mess. That's dumb. And then on the other side, it's like we don't talk about it. You suck it up and you deal. This is what we are. Because I've heard that too. Particularly when I told my story, they were like, "Oh, please, that's nothing. We all deal with that." That is the problem. We done normalize this thing. You know, the conversation of, sometimes when I talk to some people within my community, actually, my parents know sometimes, not my mom, and I've heard other of my elders, when I talk about certain topics, they're like, yeah, we all been through that. And I'm like, what? But it's just so normalized. I'm like, do y'all understand that this is a problem?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like there's that struggle within our community to be able to speak up and to get support. And then there's the struggle outside of our community to be seen as human and to get the support. So it's hard many times for survivors to get what they really need because it's like who do I trust? What do I do? You know?
Ah, it sounds like a catch-22. If it's like, I might be ostracized from my community for saying this is going on, but if also I seek services and it's from, let's say, predominantly white providers or something, they don't understand me, I might also be facing increased racism or not getting the help that I need. That's really challenging. And so, in light of this, how do you break through that really ingrained belief that, we don't talk about this or we don't, this is normal. We've all been through this. What is kind of your response to that? Like how would you maybe go about conveying like, okay, maybe it's been normalized, but it shouldn't continue to be normalized.
I'm so grateful. I'm I notice when I say we, I'm just talking about as in society, we're starting to talk a little more.
Yeah.
And what I love throughout the years, my daughter has came and told me stories about people that she knew, friends. There are times where she's like, Mom, my friend, blah, 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 blah. What should I do? And I would say, here, have him call here, have him do this. Him, so throughout the years, things like that has happened. So I'm saying all that to say education, right? We have to stop being ashamed to talk to each other. She's had conversations with me recently, just having those, and I'm just trying to help her to help others, as well as being on the side of seeing and hearing, taking care of herself, right? So just the only way we're really going to shift is giving each other permission to really talk about it and be heard and be seen by each other.
Mhm.
To feel safe as Black women, to one, to be able to feel safe with each other, to say, yeah, I went through that, and then have everyone hear that and not say, girl, yeah, me too, that's no big deal. No. And I tell them, when I hear people say that, I say, please stop that, because it is a big deal.
Right.
Right? You almost lost your life. I almost lost my life. That's a big deal. And if you don't think that mess with your psyche, think again. And I tell folks, check out how you show up in the world. How are you moving in the world? Do you think some of your stress is a part of what happened to you in the past because you keep trying to stuff it down? Right? So I have those kind of conversations, trying to tell people to please take care of you and give yourself permission to talk and to share and to have freedom in that. I feel like that's how we begin to break things, and giving other people permission to talk and to share and not just push it to the side. Because enough with saying, oh, we all experience that. Get over it.
That is just so undermining the experience that so many people have gone through, and to also be vocal about it and be met with such kind of a dismissal must be also really discouraging for then seeking
It
services.
is. Which is, I go back to myself. One of the reasons why I never shared until I left, because I'm like, I don't know, because I would hear stuff outside. People who, oh man, a woman that stays in a relationship, oh, she's stupid. Oh, did it right. So I would hear these things. So it's like, that's not encouraging. So,
Mhm.
right. So if you say something, it's like, and that's what a lot of people hear. If you don't hear encouraging stuff around you, or you don't
Right.
see it, or you don't feel it, why would I feel safe? People always say it after the fact. They say, oh, if you'd have came in, yeah, but I remember I heard you say X, Y, and Z, right? We don't, and I tell people we got to be careful how we talk.
Oh
I
yeah.
do a lot of teaching across the state, and I tell a lot of times staff and students, be careful how you talk. I said, particularly where we're talking about DV, or we're talking about mental health issues, we throw out terms just so openly, not realizing who could be harmed. If you don't mind me saying, one of the terms that come to my mind, someone that is, say they've been diagnosed with bipolar, right?
Right. Hmm.
And we just frivolously throw these terms. Let's say someone's having an up or down day, right? They
Yeah.
came in feeling good. Now all of a sudden they're kind of down. Something happened. And folks will say out of their mouths, oh, you acting bipolar.
Right.
And I'll tell them, stop doing that.
Hmm.
First, you're being disrespectful,
Hmm.
right? And you don't know who's around you who might be struggling or was diagnosed with that. And that could be something for them. Let's say if they had a bad day and they were diagnosed with that, and maybe they thought you were a friend, but now you say that in a just flippant way. Why would I trust to be able to come to you and talk to you? I
Yes.
won't, right? I won't, because I see how the lack of respect you have, right, for people that struggle with, or deal with that diagnosis.
Yeah.
So why would I open my mouth and say anything to you? Why would I trust you? Right? So we got to be careful about the language in so many areas, so that we can have the safety to feel like, okay, maybe I can go talk to my friend, and she
Mm.
won't judge me, and she'll hear me, and she'll listen to me.
Yeah,
Right?
because there is a judgment there. And I'm wondering when somebody would, let's say you disclose that you're experiencing abuse and you're met with, oh, that's stupid. I'm curious, Is there something that you wish that other person would know about what that has, a kind of emotional impact that it might have on a victim, particularly let's say they were still experiencing it. Like what does that feel like to have like a let's say a trusted family member, a community member just be so whatever about it. There's almost an implication that you're to blame when there's like, oh, that's so stupid. And it's not a choice. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
When I hear people say that, people always say to me, they say it to me a lot. You always go in these teaching rants. Yup, I because y'all always say crazy things out your mouth. So if you didn't say crazy things out your mouth, I wouldn't have to. So I hear a lot of that conversation, negative, she's stupid, she this. And I'll educate. I say, do you realize that there could be a possibility that if she was to leave today, that she could be killed? I said, do you realize the statistic of how many women are killed when they leave? And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, what? I said, do you understand what domestic violence is about? It's
Right.
about power and control. So
Mhm.
if she leaves, his control has been taken away, and he's going to do everything he can possibly do to get it back,
Mhm.
even killing her. And they're just like, seriously? Yeah, seriously. It's the most dangerous time. Like it's like they're dumbfounded. They're like, okay, and then they're silent most of the time. I'm like, so when we're calling her dumb or that's ridiculous, you know, because then they also add, well, she's stronger than that. It was said to me, well, you're stronger than that. I remember someone had said to me, actually, it was my brother a long time ago. He was like, I don't understand. You were always a fighter. You always would fight people. So how would you? I said, once again, it's about power and control. And nothing to do with being a fighter, right? So these are the things, right? It's just we have to be willing. I know it gets tiresome because it does. It gets tiresome. I always get tired of having to educate, but I feel like we need people to get it. So
Yeah.
even if it's 10 people and I only got through to one, that's one I got through.
And it matters. It makes a difference. And you know, I'm sorry you've had those experiences, but to be able to transform it into something that is educational, that you can help people, I think is really powerful. And so thank you personally for that. I think that's amazing. And it's such a complex issue because you're right. People don't understand domestic violence. They don't understand it. They don't understand how it intersects with different communities, how it presents differently. And that is exactly why these kind of conversations really, really matter because it shines a light on things that you wouldn't have otherwise known. So I really appreciate that a lot.
I'm a believer that nothing we ever went through should just be for nothing. Right? You experience that, and it's just saying, "Hey, I experienced that. Maybe that works for you." But for me, I'm like, I gotta tell folks whether it's educating, whether it's helping someone else,
Mhm.
um, to do my little, because it's just my little part, because I only talk to a small, minute part of the world. The world is huge,
Yeah.
and trying to educate, to try to make a difference in how we see people. Which I
Mhm.
say, I need you to see people. I need you to see Black and brown women. Stop making us feel like we're invisible, because we're not, right? As if we don't matter, as if we don't bleed, as if we don't hurt, as if we don't experience pain. We need support. We need help too. We need to be believed too. We need you to remove the stereotypes about who you think we are.
Mhm. Mhm.
We need you to stop thinking we're aggressive. I need you all the things.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredibly important. And, you know, before we wrap up this episode, there are a couple of community questions that I would just like to ask you. And one of it was just, in what ways has domestic violence in the Black community shifted over the past 40 years?
So I've seen some changes in regards to like organizations, more organizations coming up,
Yeah.
that support Black women specifically around
Hmm.
DMV. Of course, that's a huge change because that means we're starting to acknowledge, right, that it exists. So that's a change. I've seen it even in some churches starting to, religious communities starting to come and have those conversations. We have ways to go.
Right.
We have ways to go. But right, I've seen, and so I appreciate that. I would take them, right? But we need more. But
Right.
so I've seen, shifts in that way of conversations and
Hmm.
things like that. People starting to be able to feel like there's a place for me to be able to go, to be seen, to be heard. So
Mm.
that's some of the shift. But we just need more, so that we need more education, around the communities, so that we can be heard even more and be protected even more. So it's just more of what is happening.
I love that. Thank you. And then really just the last thing I'd like to ask is just, is there anything today that you wanted to touch upon that we didn't already discuss?
No, but just leaving with saying, please see us. We're human, right? We're not this super strong individual that, pain can't penetrate. Believe us. When we say we hurt, when we say we're being abused, when we say we're protecting ourselves, believe us. Remove the stereotypes about who we are, and see us and believe us and hear us. Give us the same support and help that you would anybody else. And when we are moving through life and trying to get our life together, don't see us as aggressive. Don't see us as being pushy. We're just trying to make it happen, just like everybody else.
I really enjoyed that conversation. Tamu, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about how abuse may present in the Black community. It demonstrates why we just can't separate a person from the color of their skin because it impacts so many parts of their life. If you'd like to learn more about Tamu, she has a podcast called The Changed Mind with Tamu and has a website, all of which I will link in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching, and please come back next week to learn more about all facets of abuse. Thank you for listening to this episode of Unsilenced, Real Conversations about Abuse. This podcast is produced by JBWS, a domestic violence agency serving Morris County, New Jersey. Please let us know what topics you would like covered on this podcast by sending an email to podcast@jbws.org. Please note that this email address is only intended for content relating to the podcast. It is not meant to offer immediate assistance or access to services. If you live or work in Morris County and think you might be in an unhealthy relationship, JBWS is here to help. Please visit our website at jbws.org to learn more about our services, or call our 24-hour helpline to speak to members of our staff at 1-877-782-2873. If you recognize controlling or abusive behaviors in yourself, JBWS can also help change those behaviors. Through our Jersey Center for Nonviolence, JBWS offers programs for men, women, and adolescent males who have used abusive or controlling behaviors in their relationships. Please visit jbws.org/JCNV or call 973-539-7801 to learn more. If you don't live in Morris County, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Domestic violence grows in silence, so thank you so much for listening and helping us break through that silence through these types of conversations. Please follow us on social media and continue to share our content to get as many people talking about domestic abuse as possible.